Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo. I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. This was supposed to be a schedule loss for the Lakers. They entered the day with their three best players, game time decisions, but Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and Austin Reeves all decided to play. Luka Doncic dropped 60 points on the second night of a back-to-back, 100 points over his past two games, and the Lakers got their eighth straight win, 134-126 over the Miami Heat. They are now 3-0 on this six-game road trip, means they will at least split the trip, which to me is always a successful road trip. And the Lakers continue to just roll. Luka is playing the best basketball of best basketball of his season, but I also think the best basketball anyone has played this season. He has been, in my opinion, the best player in the world going on the last 3 or 4 weeks. We will be touching on that, but just a ridiculous back-to-back set of games from Luka and extending this out over this stretch. He's at 41 points, 8 rebounds, and over 7 assists on over 40% three-point shooting during this 8-game win streak. He is playing out of his mind by even his standards, but especially in the context of just best player in the world, MVP, all that stuff. So the Lakers just are ascending at the right time. This to me was a huge culture win for the Lakers because I'm going to touch on this a little bit more during one of my takeaways, but the Lakers had earlier in the season been more conservative with if a guy gets nicked up, they will rest a game or two, guys not always playing on both ends of a back-to-back. But if you look at the last few sets of back-to-backs, any player that was physically capable of playing, if not for an actual injury, there was one game Luka had a groin injury. There was a game where LeBron hurt his elbow and then he had the foot arthritis rear up again. Outside of that, and those guys actually dealing with real stuff, anyone who's been physically able to play has played on the second night of back-to-backs for the Lakers. And I think that has really meant something here over the past couple months. It has shown a level of seriousness and togetherness for this group. And again, like tonight was not supposed to be a game that the Lakers won. It got in to Miami at 5 in the morning local time. Back-to-back, just played a playoff-like game against the Rockets, and they were gassed. I mean, we saw it in the first half. There were several air balls. Luke Kennard, of all people, hit the side of the backboard on a 3. Like, that was my sign that things were not right for the Lakers in that first half. It was a first half to largely forget, but a third quarter and a fourth quarter to remember, especially with Luka just dominating down the stretch and carrying LA to victory. So Lakers, again, 8 straight wins, 3-0 on this road trip, 45-25 on the season. They extend their lead over number 4 Minnesota to now 2 games technically in the standings, but with them having the tiebreaker, it is 3 games, and then it's 3+ for the rest of the West right now. Lakers also caught a little bit of a break with Phoenix losing tonight, so that continues to just like the rest of the West, the gap there is, unless things inexplicably fall off the rails for the Lakers at some point here down the stretch of the season, they are in prime position here to be the number 3 seed. But shout out to the chat, shout out to the late night gang. Appreciate you guys. Let's get into this game. So quick heads up. My mentioned it last show, but my son's out here this week for spring break. So I'm going to be going a little bit shorter tonight. I'm going to try to keep it between hour 15. I know I always say that, but I'm going to do my best to keep it in the shorter range. So going to go through my takeaways from the game a little bit shorter or quicker here, and then get into the Q&A a little bit earlier than usual. But I want to touch on Luka first and foremost. That's my big picture takeaway at up to one point, maybe like midway through the third, was going to be Lakers culture. I am now moving that to one of the takeaways. But Buha's big picture is best in the world. And what I mean by that, I mean, I think it's self-explanatory with the way that Luka's playing right now. But looking at, I think a turning point for Luka here recently and the Lakers recently was that stretch where they lost to Boston, lost to Orlando, and lost to Phoenix. That was the stretch that preceded this stretch of winning 11 of 12 games. And for Luka, I'm going to add in the Phoenix game because he dropped 41 in that game. And I think he had a great game individually. Just the Lakers ended up losing that game. But looking at the last 13 games for Luka, averaging 36.6 points per game, 8.5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, 2.1 steals, 0.8 blocks. So he's nearly at 3 stocks per game, 51% shooting, 42% on threes, on almost 13 3-point attempts per game. So an incredibly high volume there. And then 78% on free throws. So those are great splits. Those are obviously better than his season-long splits. And I mean, he's just playing the best basketball of the season for himself individually at the perfect time for the Lakers. And I don't want to jump too much into the MVP race, but I've made my stance on this clear. Like, I think even as recently as like a week ago, there were people, I forget a week ago, there's as recently as like yesterday, I saw some national clips of people still saying Luka's not a first team All-NBA guy, not a top 5 MVP guy. I mean, I think at a minimum, he has to be like top 3 at a minimum. If you want to put him third, if you want to put him second, if you want to put him first, I think there are arguments for each slot. But third is the absolute floor. Third is the absolute minimum right now. And that, I mean, look, like Shea's continued to play at a high level. Jokic has been playing at a high level. Wemby just hit a game winner tonight, had a monster game. So like there is real competition for best player in the world honors, MVP honors. But Luka's been better than all those guys over the last few weeks. And I think the thing, like putting even MVP and first team All-NBA aside, because I think with this stretch he's had, he should have already locked it up. I don't think he needed this stretch to be in the top 5 or top 3 in MVP or be a first team All-NBA guy. I think he already was that before this stretch. But for a lot of people that were, for a variety of reasons, lower on him, I mean, it's been undeniable how great he's been over these last few weeks and the monster performances that he's had against some of the best teams in the league, some of the best defenses in the league. So I think he's made it just undeniable that, I mean, even Lou Williams, who was one of the people that had he hasn't been better than Jaylen Brown or Cade. I mean, he just said this yesterday. Might have even been today. It was yesterday or today. He said that. He even just tweeted, "I was wrong," and took I don't know if I'd say accountability, but at least said he was wrong publicly. So like Luka's greatness has been undeniable, but I don't really want to get too much into the MVP stuff. I think that will play out here over the next month or 3.5 weeks of the season, and we will touch on that a little bit more. Maybe you guys will ask me about it in the Q&A. But what I'm most encouraged by is, to me, this version of Luka gives the Lakers a chance to beat anybody. I truly believe it. Of course, he's not going to drop 60 points every single night, but the way that he's been playing recently and just the level that he has been at, the Lakers can beat anybody. And that's been, I think, the biggest thing through this win streak has been, there's been a lot of, like, we can go player by player, and Austin's had big games. LeBron has had big games. DA has stepped up. Marcus has had big moments. Some of the bench guys have each made big shots, made big plays. I think JJ has coached his ass off. There's been a lot that has gone right for the Lakers, and there's a lot of credit and acknowledgement to go around. I think a lot of people have had a hand in this. But the big thing consistently has been Luka's greatness. And just even a night like tonight, where the Lakers get off to the start that they got off to, the first half that, I mean, they won on a little run there to cut it to 6 going into halftime. But Luka's consistent greatness and the way that teams have to defend him and his gravity and just the way that he warps a defense, that has just unlocked so much for LA. And no matter how much they're down, no matter how much of a rut they're in offensively, he finds a way almost single-handedly in a lot of these stretches to just put them on his back and carry them for a stretch, or carry them for a quarter, carry them for a half, carry them for a game, like whatever the context of that night is. But tonight, like deep into this game, Luka and LeBron were the only two Lakers in double figures, and it didn't matter. And they go on the big third quarter run to take control. Miami responds. It gets tight there, and there's a stretch where it looks like maybe this is really going to be a clutch game that goes down to the final couple possessions. But then Luka just went absolutely supernova in the fourth quarter and iced this game. And we've seen him do this countless times. I mean, we just saw him do it last night, and then he did it again tonight. So I just think if he continues playing like this, and there's no reason to think that he can't, really the only thing is health. And he, continues to, there was a couple plays tonight where he was grimacing and kind of like, limping or whatever for a couple possessions, but he's still that, then he'll go and knock down a three. And it's just like that's part of the Luka experience sometimes. But barring like anything health related, I don't see a reason why he won't continue this into the playoffs. And this version of Luka, I think, makes the Lakers clear favorites in round one, regardless of who they're matched up with. And it also, I think, gives them a real shot to upset San Antonio as a lower seed if, assuming they're matched up in the 2-3. And then I think it gives them a shot against OKC. I still think OKC would be favorites in that series, even with Luka playing like this. But the Lakers have a shot. Like, they can win that series with this version of Luka. And, assuming everyone else steps up and plays to a certain level. But, like, with this version of Luka, they could beat anybody on any given night. And I think that's been, we've seen it now for 8 straight games, and the Lakers have won some of those games convincingly. They've won some of those games through the skin of their teeth, but it hasn't mattered. Luka has stepped up and just been incredible here over these last few weeks, even by his standards, raising his game, his already high game, his game that already should have been first team All NBA in the MVP discussion. He raised it to an even higher level. So I think that, of course, is a story tonight. 60 points, most points scored by an opponent against the Miami Heat. This was also the Lakers' first win in Miami since December 2019. So we're going back almost 7 years ago, going back to that 2019-2020 title season for the Lakers. So just, they continue to break these records or set these marks or whatever with Luka, and I don't think that's a coincidence, and I think that's only going to continue as his Lakers career continues. But especially this season, like it is having the feeling of what Dallas captured in 2022 and 2024. And remember, those teams were not the highest seeds. The Lakers are probably not even probably, like they're going to end up being a higher seed than either one of those teams. But there's a similar feeling there. So I just wanted to acknowledge Luka's greatness tonight, Luka's greatness lately, and just how instrumental he's been during this 8-game win streak. Let's get into notable performers. So notable performers, we start with Luka, 60 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 5 steals. I thought his defense in that third quarter, that's another thing where we're going to focus on the offense because of the efficiency. 18 for 30, 9 for 17 on threes, 15 for 19 at the free throw line. But to me, it was also his defense. Like the first half was some of the worst, I think was probably the Lakers' worst defensive half during this 8-game win streak. It was Matador defense. Everyone was getting beaten on the perimeter off the dribble, and guys were late on rotations or guys were not rotating. Second night of a back-to-back on a road trip, there is an element of fatigue, and the Lakers clearly looked fatigued in that first half. But first half was a disaster defensively. They did start to clamp down those kind of midway through the second quarter into the final few minutes of the second quarter. And that's what allowed them to go on a run there to have some momentum going into halftime. But not a good defensive first half for the Lakers. But in that third quarter, when they went on, they went on a big, I think they went on like a 12-0 run, something like that. And then they had an extended run. A big part of that was the shot making with Luka. Austin had some plays. LeBron had some plays. Marcus, like several guys were contributing offensively. DA had to finish inside, I believe. But the defensive end was where the Lakers were all of a sudden they're rotating well, they're closing out well, they're cutting off drives, they're generating steals, getting out in transition. And I thought Luka was a big part of that, and that was reflected by his 5 steals, only 2 turnovers tonight. And again, the efficiency of 18 for 30, 9 for 17 on threes, 15 and 19 at the free throw line. Just a monster game for Luka. Then LeBron had a triple-double, 19 points, 15 rebounds, 10 assists, 8 for 12 shooting, 3 for 5 on free throws. No steals or blocks, but I liked his defense tonight. I liked his defensive activity, his energy, his juice, especially on the second night of a back-to-back. I mean, he played 38 minutes, which I'm going to pull this up here, but that is the most minutes LeBron has played. He played 40 against Denver, but that was an OT game, so he played 35 in regulation. The last time he played 38 minutes in a game, you got to go back to December 20th at the Clippers. Remember that game? There was no, I believe, no Luka or Austin for that game, or I forget who. Yeah, no, Luka played in that game. That's the game Luka exited early. No Austin in that game. So LeBron ended up playing 38 minutes, but that's tied for the most minutes LeBron has played in regulation. And for him this season, and for him to do that on the second night of a back-to-back, like, that's just incredible. And I've really liked the way that LeBron has been playing lately. If you look at the last, like this road trip, I think he's been great. Some big plays in the first Houston win. Last night, 30 points on 13 of 14 shooting. And then tonight, shoots 67%. He's been playing so efficiently lately, shooting 63% in the month of March. Like, that is... that's like center numbers, like that's DeAndre Ayton numbers for LeBron. And he has cut down on the threes, though he is actually shooting better on threes, but only averaging 3 3-point attempts per game this month. Whereas you look at February, that was 5 attempts per game. January, that was 4 attempts per game. December, that was 5 attempts per game. So he's cut down on the threes, has been playing more closer to the rim as a roller, cutter, getting out in transition. And he's just been playing great basketball. And then again, with the passing, the 10 assists are his most assists since February 20th against the Clippers. So we're going back a month. But I really like his passing lately. And another game where the Lakers leaned more into him offensively. He was tied for second on the team in shot attempts. So again, like they didn't have a great matchup for him defensively. I guess like Bam at the 4 when they went to the double big look with Khalil Ware. But LeBron, when he has a mismatch, I think the Lakers need to spam him and leverage him against smalls in the post, deep steals and transition. And they've been doing a great job of that. Then Austin Reeves had a slow and quiet start to this one, but ended up with 18 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 for 12 shooting, 2 for 7 on threes, 6 for 10 at the free throw line. So still a bit of an off night for Austin. I think that there's some clear fatigue with him. And I think it's interesting that LeBron and Luka were ruled in before Austin was. And then Austin, he was the last one to be to be cleared to play. So I think he's a little fatigued, a little banged up, but I said last night, he needs to be like 18 plus, if not 20 plus every night. This was like right there at the borderline. I also thought defensively, he was part of that first half Matador defense. I thought he also was a part of some of their best stretches in that third into the fourth. But then down the stretch of the fourth quarter, they were attacking him with Tyler Hero several times. Norm Powell drove past him. And they were the game plan was clearly let's target Austin and try to attack him in isolation and beat him off the dribble. And he was gassed down the stretch and gave up. I mean, I think there was they definitely scored on him. It was 3 straight possessions. It might have even been 4. So a rough defensive end to the game for Austin. And after his best recent stretch, he is now cooled off a little bit here these last, like on the road trip, really looking at the 2 Houston games and then the Miami game. I mean, he preceded that with one of his best stretches, best stretch of 2026, best stretch since probably early December. But he has not been the same player these last 3 games. Then Marcus Smart, so many big defensive plays. He was a huge part of that third quarter run. He was a huge part of LA's defensive success in the fourth quarter. Several deflections and strips on guys. Also had some key buckets and drawing fouls. Drew a foul on a 3. I think it was 1 3-point shot he drew a foul on. Might have been 2, but he took 9 free throws. And I think was great defensively tonight. And then DA, didn't have the biggest game from a box score perspective, but I liked his energy tonight. I was matched up with Bam. Bam was below 50% from the floor, 9 for 19. Several guys, because of just the way that the Lakers play defense, were matched up with Bam at different times, but DA was the primary guy. They tried to match their minutes to a degree, and I thought DA held up fairly well. There was a couple times he fouled Bam. He did have 5 fouls overall. A couple times Bam made some tough shots over him in the paint, but I like DA's spirit continues to be there in a way that I've been encouraged by. And going through the bench quickly, not a night to forget for most of the bench. Rui offensively, I liked tonight. Didn't like had a big steal in I forget if it was the third quarter or fourth quarter. I think it might have been the fourth quarter, but didn't like his defense tonight. But this is kind of a tough matchup for him just based on their perimeter speed and ball handling with guys like Norman Powell, Tyler Hero, etc. Jake, I thought came in and did some good things with his rebounding, and he racked up the fouls. He had 5 fouls at 18 minutes. His foul per minute rate is pretty high there, but I think as a connector, he did some good things. Jackson, I thought, had his best game post injury, like not from an efficiency standpoint, just 2 for 6, but I thought the Lakers were on, like with how Miami threw a bunch of different looks at the Lakers from 2-3 zone, 1-3-1 zone, switching, blitzing, hedging, like just different looks at the Lakers. That's what makes Spo. But some of those Lakers were able to get Jackson downhill and get him to the free throw line. And he didn't finish as efficiently as he normally does, but I thought the defense tonight, like the 5 rebounds, 2 blocks, I think he looked better than he has the last few games. And then Luke Kennard continues to just be quiet out there. And I thought tonight they were able to target him defensively, and his role has just progressively decreased here over these last 5 games. Like 16 minutes, 17 minutes, 18 minutes, or it's gone down from, he was in the mid 20s there for a couple weeks, and then 20, 16, 17, 18, 13 have been the past 5 games, and he just has not been playing that well, starting with the Chicago game. Then in terms of stat of the night, we got to go 60 points for Luka, his Laker career high, his season high, and also tied for the second most points in a game for his career. Of course, 73 is his career high. And then we got to acknowledge a couple milestones. So LeBron tied Robert Parrish with 1,611 career regular season games. So the next game that LeBron plays in, he will be the all-time leader in regular season games played. Just absurd, his longevity. And then Luka passed D'Angelo Russell for the franchise record for most threes made in a season. He is now up to 232 threes on the season, and that number is only going to grow with the Lakers having 12 more games left. So I assume that's going to, he's been hitting almost 5 threes a game here recently, so that number could easily hit 260, 265, assuming he plays in every game or basically every game the rest of the way. So just another notch for Luka. And then going to get through these three takeaways pretty quickly, and then we'll get into the Q&A. Going to try and hit it around the 30-minute mark. All right, I am back. So takeaway number one is Lakers culture. I touched on this in the intro, but to me, the fact that the Lakers wanted to keep the momentum going, keep the win streak going, it's easy for us from the outside to say that. And I think on some level that should be the expectation, right? Like everyone should want to play in every game and do their best to play in every game. That should be the expectation, but that has clearly not been the way that things have shifted in the modern NBA over the last 5 to 10 years. You have seen an increase in resting and load management, and we've even seen it with the Lakers at times this season, where if there's any concern whatsoever with a player and their health or their fatigue or whatever, if it is a back-to-back situation, the Lakers will held guys out earlier in the season, and that was, I think, a small part. Like clearly the injuries were the primary part in LA's lack of continuity, but there were several opportunities where, the Lakers have punted several games. Like I think about the San Antonio game, the Portland game. They've had these games where they've just outright punted and rested several starters. But that has been less frequent as the season has wore on. And tonight, playing the Heat in Miami, and we know about Heat culture, tonight to me was a Lakers culture win. And the Lakers culture that they have been building, and there's this level of resiliency we've seen from this group this year that I don't think was quite there as much in previous seasons. I think we saw it down the stretch of last year, especially in the second half of last year. But I want to give JJ and the coaching staff and the player development staff and just everyone involved with the on-court basketball ops credit for just the culture that they have built going back to last season, because and that extends to the players as well, with Luka and LeBron and Austin and Marcus and all the principal figures in terms of the players. Like the fact that if any of those guys rested tonight, like those four in particular, LeBron is 41, Marcus is in his early 30s with an extensive injury history and a style of play where he puts his body on the line every single night. Austin and Luka have been banged up with various lower extremity injuries, and there have been stretches of games where you could tell they're hindered and they're kind of limping or laboring or sort of forcing themselves through it. If any of those guys or all of those guys wanted to rest tonight, it would have been understandable. But that was not what they wanted to do. And I think that it is admirable, especially in 2026, with the way that the goalposts have moved with back in the 90s, back in the 80s, back in even the 2000s, that was not the case. But starting in the early to mid 2010s, there was a real shift in just the way that medical staffs have operated with their players. And there is a lot of data behind that in terms of some of the benefits, but a lot of it is mixed as well. But like the Lakers threw that out. They were like, we want to win our 8th straight game. And it looked like they were potentially putting themselves on the line there in that first half when they're down big. It's like they just don't have it tonight. They don't have the legs. They're tired. But they gutted this one out. They found a way to win. Luka put the team on his back in the second half. The defense was awesome in the second half. And they continue to roll and now are creating an even bigger gap between themselves and the rest of the West in that 4 through 6 mix. So I just think that this was a really impressive win from that perspective of they had every excuse to lose tonight based on the schedule, based on, they've been playing every other day for several weeks now. Like they've had a brutal March. Their March was the toughest part of their schedule, and it has not mattered. Again, like any of those guys could have sat out. They chose not to. They all chose to play. And I think this was a Lakers culture win. And then takeaway 2 is road trip check-in. So I just wanted to quickly check in on the road trip halfway through. LA is 3-0 on the road trip, which means they're going to go at least 3-3, which to me, I say, like, if you go at least, like, you should always aim to go at least 500 on the road. If you could go above 500, that's great, but 500 should be the minimum goal on the road. But looking ahead now, the Lakers caught a major break with the Detroit matchup, an unfortunate break based on Cade Cunningham having a collapsed lung, and he will now be out for at least 2 weeks, likely through the rest of the regular season. So an unfortunate break for Detroit, an unfortunate break for Cade Cunningham, but a fortunate break for the Lakers, because I think with the way they're playing, they could have beaten Detroit without Cade. But now I think going into that matchup without Cade, they will be heavy favorites in that game. So that went from maybe being a toss-up game or a game they were slight underdogs to a game that I think they will be heavy favorites. So really the only game I'm looking at the rest of the trip that I think is Lakers could potentially lose is this Orlando game. Orlando, like Miami, has been one of the hottest teams in the East recently, and they just beat the Lakers a few weeks ago. So that's going to be a tough game on Saturday. And the Lakers, I'm sure, like, they're going to get a little bit of a rest tomorrow, but I don't think they're magically going to have all this energy and be refreshed on Saturday. So that could be a game where just the level of opponent they've been playing recently, how hard they've been playing recently, some of the heavy minutes for Luka and Austin and LeBron, maybe that catches up to them on Saturday. But the Lakers can win out this road trip and go 6-0, extend this to an 11-game win streak. Then they come back and play Brooklyn and Washington. So we could be talking about a 13-game win streak potentially. Don't want to put the cart in front of the horse, or horse in front of the cart, whatever. But my brain is fried. But it's possible, right? Like, the Orlando game to me is the swing game of, if they win the Orlando game, I think they're going to beat Detroit and Indiana. And I think that puts them in the driver's seat for a potential 13-game win streak, which did not have on my bingo card for this season. Then takeaway number 3 is just a quick West standings check-in. So the Lakers won, giving themselves a 3-game edge over Minnesota, a 4-game edge over Houston, 4-game edge over Denver, and now a actually not a 7-game edge over Phoenix, because Phoenix owns the tiebreaker over the Lakers, but they're up 6 on Phoenix. So if they tie, Phoenix would steal the seed from the Lakers, but I don't foresee that with 12 games left. But Phoenix lost tonight to San Antonio, so that pretty much, the benefit for the Lakers with Phoenix losing is just that creates such a gap there, and that gap has been growing lately. Phoenix has lost 4 in a row, where it just, there's not really a chance that they end up tying the Lakers. Like, Phoenix at most can go 51 and 31. I think the Lakers are going to get to 53, 54, maybe even 55 wins. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. But of note, I just like this. I forgot who tweeted this post game, so apologies. But I looked this up just to double check, and this just puts into perspective the top of the West right now. So the Lakers have won 8 in a row. They are 11-1 in their past 12 games. Except, or not necessarily except, but just just some further context with OKC and San Antonio. OKC has won 10 in a row, and they have won 13 of 14 games. And San Antonio has only won 4 in a row, but they are 20-2 in their past 22 games. So it's crazy that, like, the Lakers are playing amazing and they have had all these statement wins, and yet you still, it's tough to say they're playing the best basketball in the West right now, or even the second best basketball in the West right now. You have extended periods of OKC and San Antonio, not just in the context of the full season, but even recently playing better basketball. And that's just pretty wild, but that shows, like, the challenge ahead for LA is, I think they've ascended past the Miami, Minnesota, Houston, Denver tier, and they are now looking up at that OKC San Antonio tier. And those guys have been consistent all season and have just been chugging along like machines. But that's the standard moving forward. And if they got 12 games left. If they can close out 10-2, they will be, I think, not viewed on the same level as those two teams, but I think have at least a puncher's chance against OKC and a real chance against San Antonio, potentially in round 2. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. Went a little over the 30 minutes, but for my standards, that's close. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Luke, after the game, I'm exhausted as shit. JJ needs to be careful here playing heavy minutes with the big 3. I assume you mean Luka, and it auto-corrected to Luke. You don't want them to be worn out come playoffs. Role players need more shots, especially Luke Kennard. Yeah, I just touched on it last night. Luka's heavy minutes. He just added another game where he played 38 minutes. So that's the past 5 games. Luka's played 37 or more minutes. I mean, he's who am I to disagree with the process? We're seeing the results. He just dropped 60 on the second night of a back-to-back, but I'm with you. I think the Lakers have to find, like, with this stretch coming up of Indiana and Brooklyn and Washington, I think those are ideally 3 games where they can rest. Maybe not Indiana because they got Zubac's back, and like we'll see that one could be sneakily tough. The final game of a road trip is always tougher than expected. But ideally, they blow out those 3 teams, can rest Luka in the fourth quarter and get his minutes down. But I agree with you. I think that's like my only minor concern. Like in general, health is always my concern with this group because you just never know. This has been like their healthiest stretch. They're only without Maxey. It's been their healthiest stretch for a while. So like, can they stay healthy the rest of the regular season? That's its own question. But like sort of a subplot to that is, can you keep the big 3 refreshed? And you don't want to be overtaxing them with a bunch of 37, 38, 39 minute games, because at some point that is going to catch up to them. Might not be in the first round, could be in the second round, could be in the third round if the Lakers are, conference finals, if the Lakers advance there. But at some point, the minutes tax will catch up to them, and I think they got to be careful with that here. Fadil, thank you for becoming a member. Shout out to Fadil. I appreciate it. Sarah talks ball. I love Jokic, but Luka has overtaken him in the MVP race. So, I mean, I guess we could get a little bit more into the MVP race. Fadil, I don't see a question. I do see a super chat just saying that, but I see now you put one in a little bit later. Yeah, so I just looked this up because I think one of the hurdles for Luka is just going to be, like, even during this stretch, just comparing, if you look at true shooting percentage and effective field goal percentage, there still is a bit of a gap there in this more extended stretch. And in every advanced metric, be it EPM or VORP, BPM, win shares per 48, whatever, pick your favorite advanced metric. LeBron, like Shea and Jokic are number 1 or 2 in some order. And Luka's not even third in all those metrics. There are a couple of those he is third. Some of them he's 5th or 6th. He's pretty much top 5 or 6 in every metric. But I only say that to say that I know there's a portion of the voters who are going to, like Zach Lowe talks about it on his show when he goes through the MVP race and he thinks about voting. He has a giant spreadsheet, and it's a lot of those numbers. And I think the one thing holding Luka back right now, and I think in part it's just the efficiency of if you look at the field goal percentage and the turnovers. I mean, Jokic's turnovers have been up lately, but just comparing him to Shea and Jokic on the season, I think that's where he just comes in a little bit lower in some of those metrics. And I know that there are Laker fans and Luka fans that will push back and say, just look at the per game averages, right? And he's leading the league in scoring, and he's up there, top 3 in assists, and his rebounds if you want to classify him as a point guard, or even if you classify him as a wing, like his rebounding is elite. Doesn't matter which position you want to put him at. For a point guard, it's like out of this world. For a wing, it's still elite. as someone who has voted and is on the media side and knows how like, I don't have a vote this year for the record, but as someone who has voted twice in the NBA awards ballots, and just the conversations I have with people and what people weigh, I think the biggest challenge for Luka is going to be, there's like, I mean, I would say the biggest challenge for Luka is like, most voters don't view it as like who's averaging more points per game. It's more of who has the higher EPM, who has the higher VORP, who has the higher win shares. And he's just behind in all those categories. Like, so that I think is for some people. And then you also look at like, I talked about this recently, the on-off splits have actually shifted dramatically in Luka's favor over this past like month or so. But over the course of the season, the on-off numbers have actually favored Shea and Jokic, which I think for some people will undercut the argument that Luka's doing more with less, because it's not just like, it's one thing if it was just, okay, like on, you expect like OKC, I think with Shea on, they're like plus 15, right? So Jokic isn't that high, Luka isn't that high, just because OKC has the best team, they have the deepest team, right? But the actual gap between Shea on versus Shea off, or Jokic on versus Jokic off, has been bigger than Luka's gap this season. And that, I think, for some statistically will undercut that argument, because you would think, based on the talent gap there, I think between the supporting casts, it would be, even if Luka's number is like a little bit lower in terms of when he's on the floor, just because the Lakers don't have as much talent, it should be the Lakers are getting like absolutely killed when Luka's off the floor. And that was not true up until recently. So I'm laying out the counter arguments here that people are going to make. I think you can make the case that Luka has overtaken Jokic and should be the number two. I think Shea, we could have the debate. I think Shea's going to win regardless. And I think that walk-off shot against Denver, I said it at the time on Beyond the Block, and I had a clip on it. I think Shea iced the MVP with that shot, with that moment, going head. He and Jokic went shot for shot several plays in a row. Shea walked out the victor, and he also did it shorthanded in that matchup. I will note, though, I think with the momentum that Luka has right now, and I mean, I said at the top, I think he's been the best player in the league for the last 3-4 weeks. I better than Jokic, better than Shea. If this continues the rest of the way, let's say the Lakers go like 10-2, and they beat OKC, I think that's going to be a huge game, where if LA can go into OKC, because I don't know about the second OKC matchup. I don't know if OKC is going to play all their guys, they might have the 1 seed locked up at that point. But that first OKC matchup in OKC, if the Lakers can go in there and Luka can outplay Shea and the Lakers win, I think that, like, sometimes there's these moments, again, like I'm referencing the Shea moment. I think that was a moment that is going to resonate with people. Like that is one of, right now, the biggest moments of the season up to this point. I think Luka's had a couple of those moments here during the streak. But if he can go into OKC and beat the Thunder and beat Shea in terms of like the individual battle, I think that would go a long way in terms of his perception in the MVP race directly against Shea. And if Luka's playing this way for the next couple weeks, they go into that early April game, beat OKC, Luka has a huge game, Lakers maybe shut down Shea a little bit, then I think it might actually turn into more of a toss-up between those two. But I think that's probably like required for it to become more of a coin flip, because at this point, I think a lot of people have already made up their mind, and it's going to be Shea. So, but yeah, I mean, if you want to put Luka ahead of Jokic, if you want to put Luka second, I have no issue with that. I just was more so providing the counterpoint that I know some people will argue, which is from an advanced metric standpoint, he's third at best, and there are several metrics where he's fifth or sixth. So I just think that will be held against him for some portion of the voting. But if he continues with the way he's played right now, like maybe he does surpass them or match them in certain things, and then it becomes more of a conversation. It is worth noting, you have like 24 hours after the final game of the season to submit your voting. So this is going to go down to the wire in terms of, I think, where Luka ends up in the MVP first team All NBA stuff. But yeah, so he still has time to make up whatever perceived gap there is right now. Jay, thank you for the super chat. I just can't get enough of this team right now, man. Just feel like something special is brewing. Like they figured out what works and everyone is all in. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, once they started to go on that run, like late second quarter, that's when I was like, Miami blew this game because, again, first like 18, 20 minutes of this game, the Lakers just didn't have it from an energy perspective. And I thought the defensive slippage, and then again, I referenced it, like Luke Kennard being in the corner, hitting the side of the backboard. Like that told me all I needed to know of he's the best shooter in the league. And his misses are never like that. And so to see that, to see some of the air balls, some of the short shots that they had, it was like understandable. They just played a physically taxing, grueling game in Houston, got into Miami at 5 a.m. Several guys were questionable to play. They all play, but like they didn't have it. And then they had that spark going into the half. And I was like, Miami needs to bury this team early in the third. Otherwise, this is it. And then they're trading baskets. They regain the lead, and then they go on that extended run. And it was like, once they got the lead, I mean, I thought it was over. Like I did not think Miami had a shot to come back. And that has been a departure from, like, the Lakers have had, the best record in the league leading at the half, best record in the league leading after three. So there has been the trend this season of when the Lakers are up or playing well, like they're typically going to close it out. And that also speaks to their clutch success. But I mean, the inverse has been true though, right? For most of the season up until recently, where when they've been down, they have had some comebacks, especially against some lesser teams. But when they're down to a team of a certain caliber, they often lose. And they've had some ugly losses in those games, but not this team, not this version of the team, not the way they've been playing the last 3 weeks or so, 2.5, 3 weeks. So yeah, I mean, something special is brewing, and I don't know what the result is going to be. I don't know if it's second round, conference finals, beyond, but something special is happening here. And I'm really excited to see where it goes. And I'm also intrigued to see like what it means for their future, because I've said it all season, but a lot, like everyone is auditioning right now for next season, right? Luka is the only 100% lock to be on the roster next year. I think Austin is a 99% to be on the roster next year. And then there's some guys that are technically under contract, but like if they really need to move them, they can probably move them, maybe even attach an asset depending on who the player is. But everyone's under some form of like an audition here. And I think that a lot of like several guys, in my opinion, have, I mean, like DA, like just think about where DA was a couple of weeks ago to where DA is right now. If he continues this and plays like this in the playoffs, then I think it's potentially a different conversation about his spot within LA's future. Like, I think ideally they still need a better center, and they need someone who's more of like in that like top 10 to 15 range of centers. And, he can be there when he's playing his best basketball, but we just have seen throughout the season, he has not consistently played his best basketball. So at this point, I think he's more of a back end starter or high level bench center. And for the Lakers, like that's a really important position with Luka, where I would like a little bit more stability and just a higher floor there on a night to night basis than what he's provided. But you could argue, especially if he is on that $8 million contract, like that's a value center. So Rui, I think, is another guy who things could shift one way or another depending on how he closes the season. So yeah, there's a lot to like about how things are going for this season and for the future. And we're going to learn a lot over the next month or so in terms of who really fits and who doesn't. And I mean, right now, like everyone's pretty much fitting and buying into their roles. And I think that's been just really fun to observe. NBA Enjoyer, thank you for the super chat. Lakers probably got 2 to 6 hours of sleep and won. Luka best in the world. Been biting my tongue until today. I'm there, brate. Lakers are now a threat to OKC. Yeah, I mean, I did a whole segment on Luka being the best in the world, so I will co-sign that. I'm not. So depends like how liberally you want to use the word threat. Is it conceivable that the Lakers could beat OKC? I would say yes, especially with the way that Luka's playing. Would I bet on it? Would I say this is like a 50-50 series or even like a 55-45 series? No, I need to see, like, this is LA's, 8-game win streak, now officially longest win streak of the season. This is the best stretch of basketball they played this season by far. I think even better than that 7-game win streak. Like, let's just say they didn't play Miami tonight. We're still having this conversation. This win streak is better than that win streak. If you look at the opponents, that win streak, I could just pull it up here really quickly. Let's just contrast who the Lakers beat. That win streak was New Orleans, Milwaukee, Utah, Clippers, Dallas, New Orleans. So Utah and New Orleans twice. The best team, like the Clippers were not the Clippers. That was still during the Clippers 6-21 start. And Milwaukee, I think had been around 500 at that point. And, obviously, their season is falling off the rails. You contrast that with Indiana, New York, Minnesota, Chicago, Denver, Houston, Miami. There's only 2 subpar teams in there in Indiana and Chicago. Everyone else is a playoff team. And in the case of New York, Minnesota, Denver, and Houston, those are 4 top 10 teams and 4 teams that you could argue at the time the Lakers played them were perceived to be better than the Lakers. And the Lakers have been quickly ascending up. I track all the power rankings and the contender rankings and all these things. And the Lakers have just continued to rise in all of them. And that's been, in part because of this streak here. But I want to see it go a little bit longer to really put them on the level of it being closer to a toss-up against OKC. Like, I think that's a bit premature. OKC, defending champs. I think one thing that's flown under the radar with the OKC season is, I tracked this at the All-Star break, and I've continued to track it. Like, OKC's missed the most games of anyone in the top 6 in terms of injuries to their top 10 rotation players. Now, they can afford it because they're the deepest team and the best team from a roster perspective, but it's not like OKC has been this, like San Antonio on the flip side has been healthy. Minnesota has been healthy. Those 2 teams in the top 6 have been healthy. Houston's been relatively healthy outside of the Adams and Van Vliet injuries, which are 2 huge injuries, but it's like they lost 2 guys and that sucks for them. But outside of that, they've been pretty healthy. And then the Lakers, Nuggets, and Thunder have been the 3 most injured teams. But OKC has been the most injured of those 6. And J-Dub's missed half the season. Alex Caruso's missing, not playing back-to-backs on a minutes restriction most nights. AJ Mitchell missed a bunch of time. Hartenstein's been in and out of the lineup. So, like, I just say all that to say that even looking at OKC's record, I don't think that's indicative of this team's talent. And, they fell from grace not winning the 60 games. The 70 games, but they're still on pace to probably win 64, 65 games, which is nothing to sneeze at. Like, that is a legit season, especially given the talent at the top of the league right now. Like, the top 9 to 10 teams, I think this is as deep as we've seen a top 9 to 10 in several years at a minimum. So, point being, I think they still have a ways to go to get to OKC, but I think they can get to the point, and especially if they make the conference finals, like at that point, I always say this when we talk about like theoretical playoff runs. If the Lakers are playing OKC in the conference finals, that means they beat a good team in round 1 and they almost certainly beat San Antonio in round 2. And that means they have a couple playoff series wins under their belt. They're playing great basketball. And at that point, then I think they have a chance to have a really competitive series with OKC. OKC, I think still is the team to beat. And until proven otherwise, like I'm going to operate under that assumption of they're the favorites. But the Lakers play them a couple more times in the regular season. And we'll see how the rest of, we'll see how those 2 matchups go. We'll see health wise. Like I think they need to get healthy. If they don't have J-Dub or they don't have Caruso or Hartenstein, whoever is potentially out, I think that will matter more in a playoff setting than it would in the regular season where they can just kind of get by with their depth. But they need their top 7, 8 to be at full strength and beat the best teams in the West, and that includes the Lakers. So a lot of time in between then, but I mean, it is trending toward it being more of a series than it might have been as recently as a few weeks ago. Jay, thank you for the super chat. Remember a while back when I talked about Luka shooting 24 plus field goals? Yeah, forget about that comment, please. Luka now second in MVP odds over Wemby on FanDuel. Interesting. So I'm surprised by that because he had just been sixth in MVP at FanDuel. I'm surprised Wemby's third. I thought he would be. Let's see here. Well, all right, it's not coming up for me, but I will take your word for it. That is notable. I still, as I said, I think he probably needs to beat Shea head to head to snatch the MVP from him, but he could. I would not put it past him. I mean, he did it last season, so we'll see if they could pull it off when they play in OKC. Fadil, thank you for the super chat, and thank you again for becoming a member. I think we could beat the Spurs in a 7-game series, but we would have to be able to make perimeter shots because of Wemby's ability to protect the paint. OKC is the only West team we would lose to. This is where I have landed as well. Like I think OKC, up to this point for me, OKC's been the only team that it's just theoretically difficult for me to see the pathway to beating them. San Antonio, I think they have a chance to beat them. I still would favor San Antonio as of right now, but there's just the unknown aspect of their lack of experience and just NBA history. Again, I've made this point several times here recently when we talked about the Spurs, but you just take the last 10 years, you look at Golden State, OKC, Boston, Denver, some of these young teams that were together for multiple years before they finally broke through and won a championship. They had each of those teams, with the exception, Golden State and OKC kind of got the fast pass and went from second round to title, but Denver had to make a conference finals beforehand. Then they had a couple of interlude seasons. Boston made the conference finals several times before finally, they made the finals and lost and before finally breaking through. So NBA history suggests that a team like the Spurs is going to have to go through at least a couple of postseasons before they really break through. Now, does that mean they can't beat the Lakers in round two and can't make the conference finals? Like, no. Like, all those teams had some semblance of making the second round or conference finals or finals along the way to winning a championship. So this could just be a season where San Antonio makes the conference finals, loses to OKC, and then maybe next year they make the finals, win the title, whatever. So I'm not saying they can't, because of the lack of experience, they can't beat the Lakers, but it is a factor. And it could be a factor, I think, as soon as round two. But I agree with you that the Lakers shooting would be honestly, to some degree, like Marcus Smart is the Lakers' most important player because there are going to be a bunch of postseason possessions in close games that end up with Marcus Smart being the guy who teams cheat off of and have him shoot. I mean, we've seen that in a lot of these close. We saw it in the Denver game. We saw it in the Houston games. Like, that is the guy that teams will cheat off of and dare to shoot and will live with Marcus making shots. We've seen it against San Antonio. Think about that game back in December. He was the guy that they were just cheating off of and saying, Marcus, shoot as much as you want. I think he hit like 8 threes that game. But the Lakers are going to need that. Now, he's not going to hit 8 threes every game, but they're going to need a lot of games of Marcus hitting probably like at least 3 or 4 threes because of the volume he is likely going to get with how teams, like if I'm a team guarding the Lakers, I'm having Wemby guard Marcus and roam. And now, matchup wise, it gets a little tricky because they don't have a great matchup for Ayton. If you take Wemby off, unless they go like double big, which I don't think they'll do. But yeah, there's gonna be a lot of big men on Marcus, especially if they go small, and having that guy roam and daring Marcus to make plays. And to his credit, he's made a bunch of big shots. We've talked about it all season. He's been money in crunch time in a lot of these games, but there's also been some games where he has missed some shots, and like that's potentially going to be the bellwether in some of these clutch games come playoff time. Fadil follows up and says, let's just say LeBron hypothetically took a minimum this summer and we traded Rui Connect for Herb and signed Kessler at $30 million, signed Najee Marshall, Luka, AR, Herb, LeBron, Kessler, Smart, Marshall, Laravia, Ayton, Kennard, Hayes. Just want to double check that Najee is an unrestricted free agent. So Najee Marshall actually is as I thought, he's under contract for next season, but he's making 9.4. So I would take Najee Marshall out of this. But if LeBron was hypothetically coming back on the minimum, yes, you could trade for Herb Jones and Walker Kessler and fit that all in. You could even pay LeBron a little bit more depending on what you do with some of your other moves. But I also see you're bringing back Smart. I don't see any scenario, unless Smart gets injured here down the stretch of the season, I don't see any scenario in which he does not opt out. So Smart, if he opts out, will be getting some more money from the Lakers. Then you have maybe Ayton opts in. I've talked about, I think it's going to be tough to keep Smart, Kennard, and Jackson. Like with Jackson, you have the bird rights. I think Smart and Kennard might end up being an either or. I would favor Smart between the two, but just based on the Lakers' cap situation, if they're adding like the two impact guys like a Kessler and a Herb, if they're only adding a Kessler, then you have a little bit extra money. You can maybe spend some of that cap space on keeping Smart or keeping Rui, and then save one of the exception, your room exception for Kennard. But I think it is going to be tough to keep Smart and Kennard. I think that's a mini decision the Lakers might have to make, and I think the decision's pretty clear. Like Smart has just been better and more important. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Thoughts on the Hawks, 11 straight dark horse team. I'm not fully there with the Hawks. I think if you look at who they've beaten the Wizards and Nets, and it's just been, let's go through the street quickly. Brooklyn, Washington, Portland without Denny, Milwaukee. I think Giannis actually played in that game. But Philly, I'm pretty sure they were decimated. Dallas, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Orlando, Dallas. So they've beaten largely, they've beaten Brooklyn twice, Milwaukee twice, Washington twice, Portland without Denny. I'm looking at the Philly game. Philly had Maxey, but no Embiid, no Paul George, of course. Like Philly's been skidding a bit here. And then Dallas, who's also tanking. So Orlando's the one nice win that they just had on Monday, and they beat them by 12 at home. But most of these games have been like they've just hit a really. If the Lakers had this stretch of schedule, the Lakers are going to win 11 in a row as well. Or honestly, I think just any team with a certain competence. I think the thing I'm most impressed by with Atlanta is because I view them as a middling team. Middling teams typically don't display this level of consistency. And I think there are, for example, Charlotte's not a good example because Charlotte's been rolling for a while, but let's just say, let's go to the West, right? If this was Portland or Golden State, I don't know that Portland or Golden State wins the 11 straight because of just the lack of stability and consistency within their rotation and just nightly performance. So I think the stability and consistency from the Hawks has been impressive, but I don't view them as a dark horse. Like right now, they're the 6th seed. I just think the top 4 in the East are ironclad, and I don't like right now they'd be playing the Knicks. I know they're playing well right now, but I just don't see them having a real shot. I think that's probably a 5-game series. If they can get up, they're only a game and a half out of 5. Can they pull off the upset against Cleveland? I'm a little bit lower on Cleveland than most, just because I don't trust James Harden's playoff track record in big games and games 5 to 7 in a series. But I still think then Cleveland would win that through Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley. So yeah, I think they could maybe have a feisty competitive series in round 1, but I don't see them beating any of those top 4. Oi, da boy. Been a minute. What up? Hope you're doing well. Thank you for the super chat. Single Luka dropped 60 for the baddies in Miami. Yeah, I mean, look, it's actually good for the Lakers that I made this joke on Spectrum that it's good for the Lakers that they had second night of a back-to-back in Miami or either end of a back-to-back in Miami because although second night's better because you're not actually spending a night in Miami, though. Well, I'm curious to know. I want to find out if they're going to be staying in Miami tonight. And typically that's one of the cities you stay overnight. But I think it would have been bad if they had an off night before the Miami game. I'll just say that. Maybe not necessarily for Luka. I'm not going to project what Luka would be doing on an off night. But in general, Miami, there's a few cities, LA, Miami, New York, Toronto is one of the underrated ones where their nightlife is undefeated, and you'll see road teams have stinkers. I mean, the Lakers had lost 6 straight in Miami, right? So it's a tough place to play sometimes. I will leave it at that. And honestly, if it was not second night of a back-to-back, I would have gone to the Miami game. I will also say that. Reed, thank you for the super chat. Last night you said we can't afford Herb/Trey, LeBron, and Kessler, but Spotrac has us at 72 million if DA, Marcus opt out, 90 if we trade Vando, DK. Is that wrong? Well, so I said there's a lot of moving parts within all this. Depends on the contract for LeBron. I think if I remember correctly, you pegged it around 20 million. Also a big difference between Herb and Trey. I think there's around like a 12 or $13 million difference there, which depends. So to this, I've been operating under the assumption that DA is not going to opt out. That could change with the rest of the regular season and the playoffs. As of right now, I think it's closer to 50-50 and could go either way. We'll see how the rest of the season goes in terms of DA and his market. 2 weeks ago, I would have said he's for sure opting in and he's not going to have a market above the minimum or maybe like the lowest exception. Now there could be more of a market for him. So DA is a bit of a wild card here in terms of if he does opt out, that does push the Lakers, cap space like that shifts it by 8 million. But I recently talked about this on the episode with Eric Pincus. We went through the different variations. So there are scenarios in which they could have. But my thing though with the Vando DK is I don't see a scenario in which you just dump Vando and DK. You're going to have to attach a first round pick at a minimum. Like there's no team that's just going to take Vando and DK. Maybe a team will take DK, but they're not just taking Vando with 2 more years on that contract. Like I've repeatedly said, that's a negative value contract around the league. And I think most people view him as a minimum level player who's making 11, 12 million for 2 more seasons. That is just a really tough contract to move. So, I mean, the Lakers looked into moving these 2 guys at the deadline and they weren't able to. They really shopped Dalton and no one had interest in him. So it's like, I think that is a very optimistic projection to be able to get off of those guys without giving up a first, which then limits your build. Like if you give up the first, you don't have the 3 firsts, as I think you had said yesterday, to trade for Trey. And then you do still have 2 firsts to trade for Herb. But, maybe you could put Vando and DK in that deal. But I think it's a lot easier said than done to move the Vando contract, but also those 2 combined if you want to combine them. So there's different variations of the offseason. There's also what happens with Rui. Do you just let Rui walk? But I think the most likely scenario is somewhere between 48 to 57 million. Now, there are different situations in which it could climb into the 60s. I think 72 is a little high because you also have to factor in there's minimum cap holds, which any roster spots you're under 12, they dock you about 1.1 million. Let's just say you have 8 players under contract. They'll dock you, 1.1 times or whatever the number is. It might be a little bit higher times 4 as like empty roster charges. So that affects your cap space. They also still have the 2026 pick and that player's contract, which should be 3.5, 4 million, depending on where LA slotted. So there's a lot of moving parts here in terms of what the Lakers are going to do and if they are going to rescind the rights of certain guys. So it's not impossible to pull it off, but it is very unlikely, and it would likely require, like, if you look at the teams with, maybe you could flip Vando to a Chicago or Brooklyn, but I'm saying you're going to have to attach a first round pick, and the Lakers have not typically been a front office that likes attaching assets to get off bad contracts. They waited till the 11th hour with Russ, and they've just eaten some of these bad contracts recently instead of trading them. So I would pencil it in more like 50 to 55 million. I think 72 is a little optimistic. Musel K 420. Thank you for the super chat. Way too many minutes for these guys. Jovan, JJ should at least give 10 minutes to one of Kobe, Adu, Maxi, or Vando. We need just one more body who can contribute. I didn't even really touch on the rotation today, so I'm glad you brought it up. No bench player played 20 minutes tonight. So this has been, last few games, this has been trending in the wrong direction, where it was a couple guys played 20 minutes. The last two games, it had been one guy played 20 plus minutes. That was Rui. Then tonight, nobody played 20 minutes off the bench. Only went with 9 guys. To your point, Vando, DNP, CD. Maxi's out. Maxi's going to be out for a bit here with this back injury. I think the guy, I would have gone to Vando as the 10th guy and then Drew Timmy probably as the 11th guy. I don't think Dalton, you didn't mention Dalton, so I'm just going down the order here of the box score on ESPN. Dalton, I don't think should be playing. Adu, I think should be dusted off for a shot, but JJ has nixed that and shot it down. Kobe is the other guy but I think it's more so like Vando and Drew Timmy would be the guys that I would look at realistically, because I don't see Adu getting a shot here. The Musel K follows up, not an AR hater, but he doesn't look comfortable with a certain type of player's team. Hopefully he kills it in the playoffs. We need him to be more aggressive at the rim. Yeah, I don't disagree. Like tonight, another one of those nights where just was not quite himself, even at the free throw line going 6 for 10. Austin's an 87% free throw shooter, so it's rare to see him have an off night to that extent at the free throw line. But yeah, I think ultimately his season will be judged on the postseason. I think he's made incredible strides. I think that opening stretch of the season into mid-December, he was playing at an all-star level. I would say even until like late November, early December, he was playing at a third team All-NBA level, but he obviously has not been that same players since coming back from injury. It looked like he was turning things around and getting back to being that player over that 4-game stretch, but he has just not, he's kind of been closer to the player he was before that stretch over these last 3 games. I think he's still finding ways to contribute. Like the passing has been better lately. Some of the defensive stuff with the steals and the charges and the blocks. And I think he's still a guy who's like going to contribute in other ways. I think there is this notion with him that if he's not scoring, he just doesn't contribute. And I vehemently disagree with that. But I also think the Lakers need his scoring. Like that's one of, like, if he is going to be viewed as the number 2 option moving forward, you can't be having these stretches of 15, 14, 18 points. Like as the number 2 on this team, it needs to, as I said last night, like 18 is like the floor, but it really probably needs to be around 20. Now, there is the element of he and LeBron are still, I think it's more of a 2A, 2B than a 2-3 situation, but LeBron's been playing better these last few games, and maybe there's like a seesaw element of the usage. And like last 2 games, Austin's combined for 21 shots, where game before that, 18, and then 3 games before that, 20 plus. So, I know the Denver game went to overtime, but for perspective, he took 21 shots in the Denver game. The last 2 games, he has taken 21 shots. So that just shows you the decreased usage here recently. But yeah, I think he's got to be more aggressive offensively. And I think the floor, and typically I think he's been a pretty high floor player outside of some stretches in the playoffs. But I think it's got to be higher here the rest of the way. All right. Benjamin G, thank you for the super chat. The more the Lakers win, the more I worry Rob is not going to realize they're winning despite the roster, not because of it. Keep it up, my man. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I agree. I am in agreement with you. There's been a part of me that's been a little like, I start projecting out until the summer and I'm like, I really hope this is not used as like proof of concept that this is the style of roster that, like, there are certainly some things I like about this roster. And I think Marcus and DA have undeniably been hits. I think Jake has been a hit in more as like that 7th, 8th guy bench role. I think he has contributed and played up to his contract, but they still need, I stand by, if the Lakers lose in the first round, in the second round, and the conference finals, whenever the Lakers lose, if they don't win the championship, I think one of the biggest, if not the biggest factor, will be they are starting and relying on players who they're starting players who would be bench players on other teams, and they're playing bench players who would not be playing on other contending level teams. And they have the top end talent with Luka and LeBron and Austin to overcome that and offset it to a degree. But at some point, I think that will probably be the thing that undoes this team, is that Marcus Smart and DeAndre Ayton are in an optimal roster build, high-level bench players, not starters. I think Jake and Luke Kennard and even Jackson are probably more fringe rotation guys than like prominent rotation guys. I think Rui is another high-level bench guy. They've slotted him in a more appropriate role, but I think they just have like multiple guys in the rotation that are slotted a little bit too high than they should be. And that might just be the thing that undoes them ultimately from a talent and skill perspective. They've got it in amazing quantity with the stars and with the top end talent. And I think right now they have the best player in the league, and that can get you so far to a degree. But we've also seen more recently teams have gone away from pursuing like the 3-star build or having more of a top end heavy roster, and have prioritized depth, athleticism, two-way play, energy, motor. Those are all aspects that the Lakers are still lacking in compared to the other top rosters. So JJ's done a great job. The players have done a great job buying into the system. And I think especially defensively being greater than the sum of their parts collectively. But I still think there's a bit of a ceiling there that they might or likely will run into at some point, be it the second round or the conference finals, where it's just, you compare, I've made the point before, and the win streak does not change it. I think Marcus Smart is their 4th best player. I think he would probably be the 9th best player on OKC. I think you could easily name 8 and maybe even 9 guys on OKC that you would take over Marcus Smart head to head. So that's just the talent gap between those two teams. Now, can Luka outplay Shea? Can the Lakers' big 3 outplay OKC's big 3? Yes and yes. But then you look at spots 4 through 9, and I don't think it's remotely close. So that's where I still think there's a sizable gap between the Lakers and the Thunder, and that's on the roster. And there needs to be some lessons from that, and it needs to be course corrected this summer. Savage, thank you for the super chat. I hope AR sits the next 4 or 5 games so his wrist can heal. Need him 100% at the end of the season. I mean, it's not going to happen, but I would like Austin to get some rest so he can go into the playoffs 100%. And there's no talk about an injury or whatever. You know, maybe he struggles and then there's a talk about an injury that comes out during the series or after the series. Like, I want him right going into the playoffs. Going to go through the last few here, and then I'm going to wrap. Already went over my 115 mark. Ricky Burt, thank you for the super chat. AR is not a championship caliber number 2 and won't be. Can't give him max unless it's to trade the contract. Not trying to be negative, but it is what it is. For me, the jury's still out on this. I am leaning more toward him being a 2.5 or potentially a 3. I think at a minimum, he's proven to be a 3. I think there's the question of, can he be a 2.5? And then it kind of depends on who your 2 is. or maybe you have a couple 2.5s, or can he be the number 2? Like that to me I will not feel confident giving you a definitive answer on that until we see what it looks like in the playoffs. But he's obviously had this extended stretch post-injury where he has not been back to the player he was pre-injury, at least from an offensive production and output and confidence and aggression standpoint. And if he does not get back to being that player down the stretch of the regular season or the playoffs, then that is a reference, that's a big reference point. And I've said, I think even in that case, you have to retain him and then try to flip him at some point in the future. But that will be a reference point of maybe this just doesn't work as a pairing, or maybe he's not on the level of a Dallas Jalen Brunson or Dallas Kyrie. Like, I'm not ready to proclaim that just because I think he was so great to start the season and just even recently with that 4-game stretch he had. But he needs to continue being that player and show that that was not just a flash that we're going to look back in a few weeks and be like, oh yeah, I remember when Austin had that 4-game stretch. He never quite was the same guy again. I remain optimistic and bullish on Austin. I will be optimistic and bullish on Austin until he proves me wrong. But it is like, it's go time, right? 12 games left, then the playoffs. So whether he needs some rest or whatever, he needs to get right into going into the postseason. And that to me will determine ultimately where I think he's at. But in terms of the max, I do think that this recent stretch has probably cost him a little bit of money and dinged him a bit. We'll see. But I mean, I've said I think 30 is like his absolute floor. I think his realistic floor is probably 35. And then his max is 42.5 starting out. So somewhere in between there, but right now it might be more in like the mid to late 30s. Chris, thank you for the super chat. LA is 1-7 against top tier teams. OKC, Boston, San Antonio, maybe Western Conference Finals ceiling. It's a fun run though. So some context with this I think is important because I think sometimes like people will just look at the record, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but there's some context within the record. So one of the losses to Boston was only Austin in Boston. No Luka, no LeBron. You can count that as a loss. I only count the loss in LA. Now, they did get their ass kicked. It was embarrassing. It was Pat Riley statue night. That was inexcusable. But that was like the healthy game that they played against Boston, that they had Luka, they had LeBron, they had Austin, got their ass kicked. So I count that 0-1. San Antonio, now this one they've only really played one like full strength game, and San Antonio beat them. So you could go 0-1. Last 2 games, one of them the Lakers punted, one of them they only had Luka. And then the first game, some may count that, but there was no De'Aaron Fox and Dylan Harper on one side. There was no LeBron and Austin on the Lakers side. So Lakers won that one. It's tough. It's tough for me to be like, let's count that one, but then let's not count the one where they had Luka in San Antonio, even though they were depleted in that one. Maybe if you want to count that, like optimistically, if you want to count that, you could say 1-1. I might lean more like 0-1 against San Antonio in a full strength battle. And then OKC, first matchup, no LeBron, though OKC did not have J-Dub. And then second matchup, no Luka. And then OKC did not have Shea and AJ Mitchell. So I think those kind of cancel each other out. I would even argue that if you want to argue Luka is more important to the Lakers than Shea is to OKC, I do think that AJ Mitchell being out at least makes that equal, if not more of a loss on the OKC side. But once you get into the context of it, like there's somewhere between 0-2 to 0-4, I guess, in these matchups. If you want to be generous, you could give them the win from November 5th. I think this team, while they've gotten back to playing like that team, like it's just a different makeup, the different identity, different rotation, different starting group. That there's a lot of differences between this current team and that team. So I almost view it more as like 0-2 or 0-3. Now that's still not promising. I'm not like 0-3 versus 1-7. it's better, but it's still not good. And that's the final thing. And I've been making this point. I want to be clear. Like, I would still favor San Antonio and OKC. I said, I think a couple streams ago, my current projections would be San Antonio in 6 and OKC in 5. Even with the win streak extending, I have not changed from that perspective. I think it's only given me confidence in LA's ability to get out of round 1. And I just said last night, I think they'd beat Houston in 5, but I would still pick OKC and San Antonio ahead of them. And I think there is some evidence within the course of the season that those two teams are just on a different level. But I also think that's where the OKC game to me is the biggest game remaining in the season, because that is a measuring stick game where I really hope the Lakers are healthy. I hope OKC is healthy. And I just want to see a heavyweight bout and how the Lakers stack up. If they go there and get their ass kicked, they go there and get their ass kicked. And then we know, okay, they probably can't beat OKC, but maybe they surprise some people and go in there and beat them. Jay, thank you for the super chat. Hypothetical question here for fun. If LA traded Rui, DK, and a first for Wiggins, would you think this team has more than a puncher's chance versus OKC? I like it. Wiggins, of course, was out today, just to make things more interesting with this question. I admittedly have not been as tapped in with Wiggins post deadline once it was just clear that he was not going to be a Laker. I mean, for just some perspective here, he has played 2 games in March, so he's been out here for a bit. But if you look at his February splits, 18 points a game, 51% shooting, 48% shooting on threes on 6 3-point attempts per game. So that would be second on the Lakers behind Luka in terms of attempts. 3.5 free throw attempts, 78%, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, a block and a half, and a steal. I always thought there was a big gap between him and Rui. I think people were being a little bit too generous to Rui Rui's a better shooter than Wiggins. Wiggins does basically everything else better than him. He's more of a natural scorer than Rui is. I think he's a better cutter. He's a better finisher. He's more athletic. He's a better defender. He's a better rebounder. He's a better passer. He's a better ball handler. I think outside of catch and shoot threes, which is an important part playing next to the big 3, and the one dribble pull up that Rui's automatic with, the other 7 to 8 big parts of both of their collective games, Wiggins is, I think, decisively better than Rui. Then DK is a minus, and the first would be tough to lose, but you would then have Wiggins locked in as your starting wing going into next season, and then you would potentially need a LeBron replacement depending on what happens with him, and then a replacement at center. So I do think this team, I just think, because the first doesn't affect you this season, right? That does not affect this year's roster. Dalton's not playing. So it's really, would swapping Rui and Wiggins and then probably moving Marcus to the bench, would that make this group better? I think it would. I think there's a big gap between Wiggins and Rui because it's not like Wiggins is doing, they have several guys who on the season, Norm Powell's averaging 22, Tyler Hero's averaging 21, Bam's obviously averaging 20, which has been carried by the 83-point game. Jaime Jaquez is averaging 15. So it's not like Wiggins is playing on some bum team where he's getting all this usage and all these easy points. No, he's playing on a team with 5 guys averaging 15 or more points. He's in the mix there as the 4th or 5th option. And I think he would fit in better in LA. So, and also I think the shooting has been better than people realize for quite some time now. Again, he's not a Rui level shooter, but he's shooting 40% on 5 threes per game. He has more volume than Rui. That's another thing here. Part of it's the usage, but he's also getting it up. And looking at the last 4 seasons for Wiggins, or 3 seasons, actually, you know what? We could go back to 2020, 2021. 38%, 39%, 40%, 36%. So that's the one league average-ish season. 38%, 36, another league average, 40% this year. So we're going back the past 7 seasons. He's had 2 years as a league average shooter. The other 5 years he's been above average. So I think Wiggins would have been worth it, but it didn't happen. Basketball. Thank you for the super chat. Send both 26 and 33 with Vando and DK for Herb. 8 and opt-in. Sign Mitch around 18 million. Jack's bird rights. Center by committee. Braun Smart. Luke split remainder. Rui MLE. Okay, so let's backtrack here. 2 firsts, Vando DK for Herb. So you're really saying Herb is worth a first, and then you're attaching the other first to get off Vando and DK. I think that's realistic from the Lakers side. I think New Orleans probably want more, but maybe the market for Herb just isn't as high as they want, and that's like the best they'll get. 8 and opt-in, so that's 8 million. If you sign Mitchell Robinson for 18, okay, and then split Rui. So if the Lakers are a cap space team, which they will be, the most they can offer Rui is 9 million. They have the room exception, not the taxpayer or non-taxpayer MLE. So just of note, like if you're a non-taxpayer MLE team, you get that 15 million to spend. Lakers don't have that. They have a $9 million exception. So I think that's low. Like I think there are teams that would give Rui the 15 million or even like 12 at a minimum. Rui would get more than the 9 million room exception. So I think that would actually be more of a, do you give that to Luke or part of that to Luke? Maybe split it Luke and Jackson or something. But you're saying split the rest with Braun and Smart. So that would be, I mean, if they're spending 18 on Mitchell Robinson, that's somewhere between 30 to 35 million or so remaining. So if you're splitting that, Braun and Smart, I think Smart's somewhere maybe 12 to 15 million for a couple years. Braun is, I guess, 15 to 20. I mean, you could get there with those two and then give Luke, I guess, the room exception or part of it. And you could actually save some, like, I don't know, give him 6-7 million, and then you lose Rui in the process. But I would like, I mean, yeah, if you could add Herb and Mitchell Robinson and go with more of a 3-headed monster at the 5, I would still like another perimeter guy here, like another wing type. But that, I think this is like a reasonably realistic outcome this summer if LeBron wants to stay / plays next year. Harry Chinani, wild take. Luka should get his tech and get suspended during regular season. Can't afford him to miss any games in the playoffs. Playoffs more intense and pressure. Not going to get all calls your way. I'm trying to remember, do the technical foul reset in the playoffs? They do. So you're at 0. So, I mean, or at least I believe so. Yeah, they reset before and then in the playoffs, it's 7 technicals is when you get suspended, and then after every 2, so 9th, 11th, etc. So yeah, I mean, I think he should just not get suspended. Just I think it's gonna be tough for him to not get a technical in the final 12 games, just based on how many technicals and the cadence with which he's gotten them, but to his credit, he's been much better with the complaining. Like, I think he's still, the volume of complaining has still been high. It's just part of his game and his personality, his disposition. But I think the instances in which he crosses the line to potentially get a technical have been few and far between. And I think he's known where the line is, and he won't cross the line. He will still complain after a call where he feels like he got fouled. But I think he's been the frequency has been down in general, I think, but still high. But I think he's had a better sense of, this is how far I can push this, and then I retreat. And then final one here from David. Thank you for the super chat. Lakers need Pacers run last year and don't get hurt. That's a good comp here, where one of the things I've talked about during this recent stretch and just during the season is like, as I've observed the runs that teams go on in the playoffs and just like later in the season, I think there is a strong correlation between how you're playing from January on and how you're playing going into the playoffs. And we will see a team or two catch fire at the right time, and that propel them into a deeper than expected playoff run. So the Lakers could easily be this year's team. I mean, I would argue, if we just look at how everyone's playing right now, like if things go, like if OKC and San Antonio are the 2 conference finalists, things have gone chalk, and we expect that. They're both going to win 60 plus games, most likely. And you would expect those two to be the conference finalists. Looking at the East, now there's some uncertainty in the top four with this Cade situation, and maybe Boston could catch them. I doubt it, but maybe. But you kind of have a sense of like the top, it's probably going to be two of those top four in the conference finals, and then one of those four is going to represent the East in the finals. If we're looking at a dark horse team here that has not really been on the radar, has not really been considered a contender to go on a deep playoff run, I think the Lakers are the clear favorite. I don't see another team. I mean, no one else has their level of momentum right now outside of the OKC and San Antonio situation. So, yeah, I mean, I know Atlanta, but I'm not there with Atlanta. And Orlando and Miami have been playing better, but again, I think the East has a real cutoff between 4 and 5. I think it's a much deeper cutoff than in the West. But yeah, I mean, the Lakers to me are that team. Maybe Denver can get it together and they enter that mix as well. But those are really the only two teams. I think Houston's losing in round one, regardless of who they play. And I think Minnesota maybe could beat Houston or Denver if they match up with those two teams, but then lose in round two. So, yeah, I mean, it looks like the Lakers right now are that dark horse team that could potentially go on a deep run. But with all that said, I am going to wrap here. Appreciate you guys. Did end up going about 20 minutes over. So, I can't help myself. But I'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time with Trevor and Jason for Lakers Collective. Then I'll be back on Saturday reacting to Lakers Magic. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Appreciate you guys. For the nearly 1,400 people of you watching right now, would really mean a lot if you could hit that subscribe button if you have not yet subscribed. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Lakers have won 8 in a row. Luka just dropped 60. Apparently, he's second now in MVP odds. Things are going great, and really excited to see how the rest of this road trip goes and how the rest of the Lakers season goes. But shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Appreciate you all. And I will talk to you all tomorrow.